Heyo! This is Who Can Win a Beauty Pageant. I made a whole video about ranking the show, and I probably said it 1,000 times already, but this is, in my opinion, one of the more underrated episodes, at least in Season 1, maybe even in the whole series. There's nothing crazy that happens in this episode. There's no grand scheme, no major flubs, just Kenny and Spenny going off on their own and polishing each of their presentations for the judges. I mention this pretty often, but episodes where Kenny and Spenny split up are less good, in my opinion, because they're best when they're together. When they split up, usually what happens is that Kenny tries to do some straightforward comedy skits or sketches or characters, and Spenny just is pathetic. And I usually like watching Spenny be pathetic more than I like watching the comedy sketches. These are episodes like Who Can Earn More Money, Better Porno, Best Play, Commercial, or Better Jew. This episode is a little different, because even though they do split up, Kenny isn't just in his comfort zone the whole time either. He's trying things, he's failing at some. It's not as pathetic as Spenny, but it's more vulnerable and authentic than how we usually see him. That's also why I kind of like Who's the Better Journalist from Season 2. There's some really great pathetic Spenny content in there, but Kenny's efforts in that episode are also kind of floundering in a funny way. But maybe we'll get to that eventually.
Portion. I'm going to try singing even though
Because the premises are so similar in my mind, I always get this episode mixed up with Fashion Show. Same thing with Better Parent and Who Do Kids Like More. If I think for more than a half a second, it's obvious which is which, but sometimes I just don't think so good. I like what Spenny says here.
I can't tell you how important it is that I pull this off. I've always wanted to tap dance, so in one way I'm looking forward to this. But it's not going to be relaxed because there's so much pressure on me to actually pull this off.
I don't even know how to make fun of him for that. This exchange coming up with the tap dancing coach is really puzzling.
I could actually pull off something like that.
If you want to, it's
Thursday.
all on Thursday. Yep.
The on Thursday is clearly a surprise to her, right? But she's just so confident. There's no way that that's going to happen, but I think she's maybe worried that if she can't do it, he'll go elsewhere, or she won't make it onto the show or something. So she keeps playing the part of the expert. But this is great because it's a stark contrast against Kenny's vocal coach, Amber, who we're going to meet. So Amber is one of my favorite experts that they visit in the show for a few reasons. First of all, Kenny does the thing where he makes a joke that's kind of hitting on the girl, and instead of being bashful or demure about it, she lets out a genuine but kind of ugly cackle.
Now, truthfully, would it actually help if my pants were off?
That conveys to me how sincere and unconcerned she is with how she comes across. She's got a tie-dye, like Lisa Frank shirt on, she's really down to earth, and not at all uptight and overconfident like Spenny's coach is. Kenny's also making some edgy jokes here and embarrassing himself, and she's laughing and having fun.
I have a friend, his name is Spenny. He looks like David Schwimmer with Down syndrome.
Just a quick side note. So far, Spenny has a pineapple head, a giraffe neck, he's got a hump, and he looks like David Schwimmer with Down syndrome.
3 years old?
3 years old. They've all got their shuffles. Yeah. Back.
Come on! Oh, you can do this.
Just do it. Come on. Don't draw that.
I'm beating this point over your head, but watch how Amber handles the realization that Kenny is way out of his depth.
You have to take this and then go do it in front of people?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were just cutting and splicing for the TV.
I'm doing it. We're having a beauty pageant where I actually have to, it's a talent section where I have to do it in front of, like, live.
Oh my god.
Oh, I'm screwed.
The fact that she's like, oh, you have to do this in front of people, really conveys her secondhand embarrassment for Kenny. And she looks at the camera when she says it, which shows how self-aware she is about the situation, and not worried about whether that would tank her appearance on the show. In fact, I was so convinced that she was cool and open-minded that I wrote to her to see if I could get some details about her appearance on the show, and she actually responded. If you're a KvS hyper nerd like me, and if you're listening to this, I'm going to assume that you are, You might wonder about all the logistics of appearing on the show, how you get asked, what it's like doing it, and living the rest of your life knowing you're a bit part of this reality show. She said that someone called her and asked if she would do the show. She didn't remember all the details clearly, but she thinks it was a female, maybe from the CBC. So not Kenny himself. The show hadn't aired yet, so she had no idea what it was at the time. She didn't have much to say about the actual experience of doing it. I think what you see in the episode is kind of what it was like. She said that she enjoyed it and that the episode was funny. And when Kenny left that segment, she never saw or heard from him again. She's a high school music teacher now, so her students love the fact that she was on this show, and it gives her a lot of street cred. I asked her if she became a KvS fan or ever watched the show again, but she said no, she's not a fan of reality TV. So I like her even more now. I think she deserves even more street cred with the KvS community as well.
Please, I'm asking you. My house too. That's mine. No, it's not.
Spenny's such an old man. He wears a tux with a top hat, does a tap dance routine, and while he doesn't end up actually wearing it, he bought an old-timey striped one-piece bathing suit. And the lingering shots of Spenny smiling are some of the most psychologically disturbing things in the show.
Always smile.
Okay. I hate my smile.
Okay. Is that because you're forced, or is that okay?
I have a little
He looks so unnatural. He looks like when you play that persuasion minigame with an NPC in Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and their facial expressions just change robotically.
How long before the pageant again?
One of my least favorite tropes in movies or TV is people being waxed. It's just a slapstick gag, and it's the same gag every time. They put the wax on, they put the paper on, they rip it off, it makes a shh noise, the person goes, ooh, ow, and that's the gag. And usually it happens repeatedly. So not only is it the same in every show you see, but they go through the same motions in every show you see.
Jesus Christ.
One thing I like about this, at least, is that she seems to really be having fun and making fun of Kenny and is being kind of unprofessional about it. Which in this case sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing. Sometimes the hilarious twist on the gag is that it's someone's genitals or ass crack being waxed, so that's instant comedy gold right there. If the angriest I get in these videos is me complaining about gratuitous waxing scenes, I should probably be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. If you like Sudi, there's a nice early 2000s ad with her talking about her spa on YouTube. It's primo early thousands obscure media.
Oh my God. Thank you for truly.
I'm having a bit of a hard time thinking of what to say about the old tap dancing lady that we're going to see in a minute or two. She's a great one-off character that's just kind of presented as she is and then not really acknowledged. And Kenny's comfort with that old lady's passion acts as a foil to Spenny trying to learn from his uptight coach. I have trouble thinking of what to say about her because I think she's great in a weird, ethereal way. She kind of comes across like a figment of Kenny's imagination, as if she's a manifestation of his internal tap dancing monologue.
Yes, we have there. Little treasure and your curly hair and a smile, and keep your chin up, darling. Yes, you'll never get anywhere in life by looking at the ground. Presentation, Get coordinated. Don't let your mouth keep turning you off. You're young, you've got your life ahead of you. Put some input for a while and see what happens. It's no loss.
Now, of course, the shoes are a dead end. They fail. Spenny complains once about them, and they're the least of his tap dancing problems. Something I talk about is how the show may seem fake or false because of how perfectly things go, to the point that it may seem suspicious, and how that can be the result of them cutting out all the stuff that didn't work. So of course it would seem kind of perfect. One reason I like this episode is that we see a bunch of stuff that just doesn't work. The smaller tap shoes are one example, but we're also halfway through the episode and Kenny's about to give up on singing because he realizes he sucks.
songs in the search engine.
And we have more Kenny at his computer, which we all know that I love.
Songs and poetry. Poetry.
When I did a survey of people's favorite episodes, I asked for people to pick their top 3 for each season. And exactly 0 people chose this episode in their top 3. On one hand, I kind of get it. There are better season 1 episodes like Concert, Awake, or Stand that are truly great. So putting this one in your top 3 above any of those 3 would be kind of crazy. But I do ask you to just keep it in your prayers. There are 27 episodes in season 1, if you count the pilot, which I do. And I think Beauty Pageant is in my top 13, so that's like the top half.
Easiest thing in the world for my talent category. Spenny is in big trouble. Big trouble.
So we're going to get some more bad OPSEC from Spenny. As you can see, a phone number for the University of Toronto bookstore written down. He's also written down A Psychology of Difference and Denial of Death, which are 2 very Spenny books that I'm not sure have anything to do with the competition, as far as I can think of. This juxtaposition's kind of interesting to me. Spenny's making a bit of a good point. Usually, like, pageant people are totally faking it. They have bad days and adversity and problems, and they have to smile through it and be a bit inauthentic. And I guess Spenny's, like, honesty in facing that is contrasted against Kenny taking the easy route and getting a spray tan, right? And the makeup and the contacts. Except that what Kenny's doing is exactly what real-life pageant contestants really do, I imagine. So Spenny has this big realization that he needs to fake it, which Kenny's already been living the entire episode. Spenny isn't a happy, tuxedo-wearing tap dancer, and Kenny isn't a tan, blue-eyed muscle man.
I'm going with the blue.
Do you think the judges will go?
There's a little editing joke here, like after Kenny says he's going with the blue contacts, and then Spenny says,
Feeling a little blue because on the surface I don't really look like the happiest guy in the world.
This is okay. I'm happy being me. It just doesn't look real. As Mr. Spenny and Kenny, I will be a wonderful example to the young people to help save the planet from extinction. I love walking in the park, and I love people. I don't love people. I love people. Happy, happy, happy. We're going to cure diseases. We're going to get rid of pollution. We're going to stop war. We're going to love each other because love makes us happy, happy, happy.
I'm sorry if that was a little uncomfortable. I thought it was weird that they left it in the episode myself.
One more time, I think we got it. All right, come on, Drew, stay with me.
What was wrong?
What happened?
You jumped too late there. You're gonna have to count when you're running, okay? So you can feel it.
The hat is essential. It's very important that he rehearses with the hat on.
Here we go now. Yeah.
Especially later in the show, Kenny's shaving scenes become a staple. But is this the only Spenny shaving scene?
I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm ready to win this pageant.
This is the same Kate that Kenny shares some bubbly with and who can stay in the van the longest. I don't know how they know each other exactly or whether she is actually a makeup artist.
Check out that six-pack.
No offense to Kate, but is it just me or does that like not look good?
The cunning mind of a conniving genius.
Spenny's getting his makeup done. It's time to switch his shoes.
The pageant itself takes place at Yuck Yucks, which is also where Spenny does his bad stand-up in Who is Funnier, and it's also where Kenny tells jokes with the judges in Who Do Black Guys Like More. You can tell from the ads that like line the walls backstage, as well as the framed photos on the back walls behind the audience in the main room. You can also see Mark Breslin in the back left of this shot, who is the judge in Who is Funnier. Carolyn Frolic was crowned Mrs. Hawaii in 2015, which is weird to me, because she was clearly in Canada for this, and seems to live in Canada now, but I won't pretend to understand the qualifications of Mrs. Hawaii. I also didn't know there was a separate pageant for married women called Mrs. America, instead of Miss America. Jimmy Steele teaches second languages at a university in Canada, and Enza is a journalist and local Toronto celebrity who's been the subject of some interviews and documentaries that you can go watch. I like the action from Kenny here. He comes out with the towel on, then whips it around to show off the goods. So much of this episode is just packed with character. Kenny's painting his body, Spenny can't let go of his sunscreen. It's great. My answer for which episode would you show your friends for the first time is always just start from the beginning, but as an early encapsulation of Kenny and Spenny, this episode is pretty great. Spenny's a dork, Kenny cheats some, he does a little trolling, but he's also charming. So this is interesting. Spenny puts his shoes on up in this room, then comically shuffles down the hall and out to the stage. But if you've seen the episode before, which I imagine you have, there's a chair right there, which is also where he takes his shoes off after he's done. So he could have put his shoes on there and saved himself some embarrassment, but that would have required him to think the shoes were suspicious at all, and he has no reason to. Spenny doesn't really sound like he's tap dancing. He sounds like he's stomping around on a piece of plywood and embarrassing himself. Kenny's "I can't believe what I'm seeing" indicator is putting his hands on his head. He does that when Spenny does his Christopher Walken impression in the dance episode, and the humiliation in Who Can Drink More Beer, and I'm sure there's a lot more. In a few seconds you can see Ariane very clearly here on the left. Right there. She's the judge of the Better Actor competition. We saw her in Better Chef, and we're going to see her again later in this episode, too. Kenny says the title is Sorrow Still, which he must have changed to avoid anyone possibly recognizing it. The Walt Whitman poem is really called I Sit and Look Out.
All the sorrows of the world, and upon all oppression and shame, dying, neglected, gaunt, desperate. I see the wife misused.
I like that when he finishes, Kenny has like a shy little smile, and it looks like maybe he's embarrassed to share his poetry with the judges, but in reality maybe he's embarrassed to be lying to them so blatantly. I never picked up on it before, but he says that he wrote the poem that day. As if he just didn't have anything planned or put together before the day of the judging, and farted out something of Walt Whitman quality on the fly. If you look carefully, you can see that Spenny is wearing his giant ugly watch that he can't live without alongside his very nice tuxedo. This is a good encapsulation of the two of them. Spenny has this antiquated classical taste that makes him look like a total try-hard dweeb, and Kenny looks slick in that devilish way. Even in his formal wear, he's wearing it pretty casually. And that's how they choose to present themselves on this stage, and that's kind of a summary of the show.
Hold me, Jimmy, hold me.
Here we are. The first name.
Is it weird that the host is talking into the camera when he has an audience of like 20 to 30 people in the room? I guess it indicates to me that the people in the room are just set dressing, and this is playing into being on a TV show, which it is. After Spenny gets the first vote, and the second one gets read, the host says, "This will be the deciding vote right here," and Kenny crosses his fingers, even though that can only mean one thing. You can see Ariane walking up to the stage with the sash right here. And you can see Spenny's uncle on the right in the audience, who was probably just as proud to see Spenny win here as he was to meet his niece, Spenita, in Who Can Be the More Convincing Woman.
Thank you all. I love you all. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Nice job. Nice try, Kenny.
Spenny's been faking smiles the whole competition, but he's actually happy now. And all Kenny can do about it is tear at him like a badger. It's finally time to play my favorite boring game. How else could this have ended? I think that Kenny had a pretty convincing routine on the stage, and the competition could easily have gone in his favor, and that would have been believable. In this case, the judges just liked Spenny's dorkiness for whatever reason, and he certainly had a lot of that, so he won instead. And that's pretty straightforward, nothing really suspicious about it. There are other Season 1 episodes like Convincing Woman or Male Stripper, where the judges similarly prefer Spenny's classic style more. And as the show goes on, that gets rooted out because it's not very subversive and therefore not very funny. I think I've said all of this before. I say it's not suspicious because when you think about other ways an episode can end, you might find that an alternate ending would be way more likely, or that there isn't any other way for it to end, which might be suspicious. But this one isn't at all. A lot of Season 1 is like that. This game would be more fun if we were talking about the other seasons, which one day maybe.
Doggy gotta make a doo-doo. Doggy gonna go for a walk in the park? Good dog. You're a good boy, you're a good.
This is cute.
Yes, good doggy.
Does watching this humiliation awaken something in anybody else? Or is that just me?
Worst things to me since this thing has started.
I'm just kidding, of course. Although if you liked that joke, please let me know so we can discuss it further.
My little dog. Yeah. Good boy. Come on, make a sissy. Smell. You gotta mark your territory. You gotta mark your territory. I said you're gonna mark it. Good dog. Ladies and gentlemen, Doggy Kenny.
I could be wrong, but I think Kenny's black dog nose is gone for these shots with the real dog. And I don't know what to make of that. Alright, well, as always, thank you.